Einen wunderschönen guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Es ist Dienstagabend, es ist 19 Uhr, die CRM-Conversation starten. Sie sind an der richtigen Stelle, wir sind auf dem richtigen Monitor und wir haben wieder einmal es geschafft, einen Top-Speaker für Sie zu organisieren. Einen Kollegen, der visionär, hands-on und gleichzeitig sehr smart ist. Herzlich willkommen, Raju Vegesna. Welcome, Raju, on our show. And now I switch to good old English, which makes it for our English-speaking audience a lot easier. I just said that you are a smart person, an empathic person, that you are visionary, but also down to earth. And that it was really, really thrilling and fascinating to have our prep call and to get to know you a bit better by each meeting we had. And I find it still fascinating, and I would like to start with an introduction of yourself, such as what is your role in Zoho?
Thank you, Ralph. First of all, it's a pleasure being and chatting with you. I have a lot of respect for each of you, so really appreciate you inviting me. I'm a chief evangelist at Zoho, whatever that means. So
it's a fair question.
It means different things to different people. Some people think I'm the chief BS officer. But it's their interpretation. So it depends on what their interpretation is. But I represent Zoho and the products and the technologies in the company. In a sense, that's what I do.
And what did you do before Zoho? Was there a life before Zoho? Nearly unimaginable, but the question is in the room.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while. I've been with Zoho for over 2 decades now. So prior to that, in my previous life, I did my own startup, creating some products out there. And later, 2 decades in, I hardly remember what I was doing prior to that.
It seems you have a history of building things from the ground up. Zoho,
absolutely.
Well, you're also the architect. The architect of the software at Zoho. So, you are a creator.
Yeah, I like being involved in some products, and I love product management. So I am closely involved in some products. So along with my colleagues, who I enjoy that stuff. So end of the day, any company, they are in business because they are creating something useful as a product or a service. So being close to that is very critical. So that's why I am very close to the products that are being created, at least to whatever extent I can.
Mm-hmm. What is you are also the brain behind Zoho One, right? So in how
I was part of the Zoho One thing. I'm not the person, but I am very closely involved among other colleagues out there with Zoho One. Absolutely. I mean, we have been thinking about Zoho One for 5+ years. I remember in 2012, when we hosted one of our first Zoholics event, my first session was how to run your entire business on Zoho. This is 2012, about 9 years back. And the concept of Zoho One kind of existed back then, but it took us a long time for us to even get to where we are today.
Okay, so let's look at it from the angle of our topic. So what Zoho One at the end of the day does is combine all company data or company-hosted data held by the company in one system and ultimately in one database, which theoretically, and now I just yank your chain, opens up a gaping hole in terms of security, privacy, because all of a sudden, well, if there's only one door once it's open, it's one door to everything, to a big room, in contrast to having various different rooms. So how do you cater for that?
Yeah, I think that also means you keep that one door secure and you're protected, instead of having 30 different doors and you don't know how strong each of the doors are. And you're as strong as your weakest link, and you do not control that weakest link. So it's a choice. It's a choice between the two. We prefer that one door approach. We think we can secure that really well. And that's a model. And it resonates with a few people. The other model resonates with a few people, a few companies. I don't think there is anything wrong with one model or the other. It's just that the customers will pick the ones they are comfortable with.
Okay, so now looking at it, there are, well, what I just described is probably more security than privacy. How do you distinguish between, or how do you define those two terms?
Security is protecting the information. Privacy deals with what kind of information. So even your private information has to be secured, even when you are surveilling people, companies, and entities. That information, whether that is right or wrong, is a separate thing. But that information still has to be secured. So no matter what information is collected has to do with the privacy. But security is, it has to be protected. No matter what information you collect, it has to be protected. And extra layers of protection is needed for sensitive information. Just like on your iPhone, you have your biometric data, facial ID, and that is all information, but it is secured in a secure enclave. That is part of. So what information is that face ID or a touch ID or your personal information like your passwords? Security is how you're protecting that information.
So how do you go ahead with the latter? Apart from being very sure that you know the strength of the one door that we just described.
Yeah, it is. Again, this is where it's actually a very simple thing. If we screw up, we're out of business. And our own entire company's information is on it. Right? We run our entire business on our own platform. Because we are confident on it. If we are not confident, then we cannot confidently sell our solution. Simple.
Yeah.
So, which also means there is every incentive as a company for us to keep it secure, because if we don't, we are out of business. It's actually as so. Obviously, a lot of precautions that are taken care on the security side and whatnot. And we are as close to being secure as, there's nothing called 100% security. Let's accept that, because there's always some hole out there, and out there. Now the question is how secure you are, how much effort are you putting in to make sure that all the doors are locked well.
Okay, so now that ties to some extent also ties into own data centers versus other people's data centers versus on-premise. What would you recommend someone or tell someone who makes the statement that their own corporate data center is much more secure than any hyperscaler or scalar IaaS company's data centers?
It varies, but I believe that you really have to own this entire thing to have the confidence and the control of it. Okay, let's say it's the same owning a house versus renting it in an apartment complex. With some of these infrastructure as a service providers, you're renting space, compute and whatnot. It's like a tenant. It is likely that someone else has keys to that space. But when you own your house, you can be sure that you control everything. So we choose a decision to own our infrastructure. We do not dependent on what I call as cloud landlords. They are essentially, they lease their compute space and whatnot. So we prefer owning a house, not depend on landlords. Again, each company has their preference. It also depends on the scale. if you're just getting started, you may not have the capital to go and buy your own space. So you go rent initially before you purchase. And it depends on what phase you are in terms of a company build out.
Okay, that holds true for a software vendor, of course. So let's look at your customers basically. Now you're obviously a cloud vendor. Your opinion must be sort of biased. If now a representative of Ralph Corp Private Limited comes to you, an SMB business who puffs out their chest and says, my data center that I have in my basement is far more secure than yours.
Oops.
Possible. It is possible. Again, there are, a small business in a lot of cases may not have the capacity to invest in securing it. For example, we spend millions of dollars paying to third-party white hat hackers to try to hack into our system to make sure that it is foolproof.
Yeah.
Right. And a small business may not have that capacity or that investment that they may not make to make sure that all doors are locked. That is an advantage a SaaS vendor like us have, where we can take multiple avenues. We can deploy teams of people across the board to make sure that things are really secure. And end of the day, particularly when it comes to large businesses, they say, I have the capacity as much as you do to secure my system. So in that case, can you deploy Zoho in my infrastructure? Those are things we started to hear. And we have those discussions frequently, or at least that frequency is probably increasing lately.
And the small homeowner, if we're using that analogy, what happens when something goes wrong in your house? Do you have a backup house? No, you don't.
Of course.
Yeah, a company like Zoho has, the resources. They're backed up. A small company that says data that I keep myself is more secure might be true until the power goes off or there's a fire.
Yes. Oops. And then the complexity are also increasing in a world where regional compliances come into it. Like European data should be in Europe. Like that, each country, I expect several major countries to come up with their own compliance requirements and all of that. And for a small business, it is going to be quite a bit of an investment out there. That is, to some extent, that is probably one of the reasons they might go with a cloud provider or infrastructure as a service provider if they can guarantee it. So there are these additional complexities, be it legal, be it compliance, be it investment related, that come into play when a business makes a decision on how they want to deploy their infrastructure.
That we do know that we can keep our doors locked if we want to keep them locked, means unwanted people out. So many businesses are building their software using frameworks that got created by, well, in quotes, someone who maybe who has intentions or other intentions. So one example there, for example, is the usage of, being able to measure the usage of your software. So how far do you think that there are impacts on users as well as your own people, actually? I mean, you're using your own software in-house, which is probably true for many other companies as well. What are the impacts? And what does one need to look for?
Impacts in terms of the usage and the measurement part? Is that what you're asking for?
Usage, measurement part, and probably side effects that need to get looked at.
Yeah. Generally, a lot of things measurement is a philosophical topic for us. Measurement is good for measuring systems and machines. Measurement is not always effective when you measure people. Subtle but very important difference. So we measure a lot of things. We measure the traffic on our site. We measure the performance of the CPU. We measure how the systems are performing, and based on that we tweak and we do it. We measure some aspects of people, but we don't put too much emphasis on it, because machines are different from people, and there are measurement becomes one, or numbers become one data point. And in a lot of cases, particularly when it comes to people, or in a broader context, numbers influence too much. Take an issue like privacy. I actually think privacy and the surveillance that we see today in the market is not the root cause. The root cause is people's or marketers' obsession towards numbers. They want to show ROI of their campaign. They want numbers. Well, they will go to their ad platforms and say, I want numbers. And to get the numbers, well, ad platforms need to measure everything. So to measure everything, they start to surveil and whatnot. So if you go back to this, the root cause really is, marketers' obsession towards these numbers result in, surveillance. These are effects that come down the lane. But the measurement on the systems and all of that makes, perfect sense. And we do measure all of those. But again, it's important to take numbers as just one data point. And that's the approach we take.
Okay, so now that you finally, in quotes, said the word that defined the conversation. So marketers do numbers, marketers create trackers, marketers want to identify ourselves because there's this great word of hyper-personalization and one-to-one marketing and all these kinds of thingies. So how in how far is there an effect or an impact then that comes via initiatives that Apple now just put into life with their new, excuse me, iOS interface is good, operating system. So by delimiting this ability, in how far do you see that as a viable way for users as well as vendors? Because at the end of the day, there should be a give and take.
Yeah.
There should be a give and take, but end of the day, who is giving or is someone asking, right?
Yeah, and who's giving how much?
They're basically grabbing it. So end of the day, simple. I very much like Apple's policy of providing an option to the user. I mean, look at what's happening today in the market. I read in the news that credit card companies are sharing the transactions that we do to advertisers. That is our information without our permission, right? Nobody is asking us. Medical companies have the information about our healthcare data, healthcare records, our lab tests, and they're sharing this data with other providers without asking us. Again, they're just grabbing the data. The real estate data, like about the house we live in, the value of the house, the taxes we pay, all this information is basically shared with some of these advertisers. Again, nobody's asking us. So this goes off industry after industry after industry, and that happens in the technology industry as well. Nobody is asking us what information I should collect. They're just grabbing it. For once, there is basically a rule, or in this case, a system that is coming in and saying, hey, I am giving user the permission, and then users are now saying, yeah, I'm glad I have the control. I'm going to turn it off. So I think we have gotten too far towards taking all the information, grabbing all the information without users' permission. And I believe that users' information has to be in users' control, and they should decide what to do. So it's a simple question of opt-in versus opt-out. Let users opt in. That said, it's not like anybody is perfect. Apple is not perfect either.
No.
I like Apple's policy on this iOS update, but I do not like their policy on whatever they did do with AirTags, where it is not an opt-in, it is the opposite. So they, on one side, they did a great thing on iOS. On the other side, this opens a new can of worms, which is essentially a surveillance networks of anything and everything. And say, so does, say, like an Amazon Sidewalk and Apple AirTag. It's the same thing, but to some extent, it is scary to think about the implications that will come 3 years, 5 years down the lane on those. So I'm a strong believer in providing the user the option and let the user opt in and consciously share what he or she wants to share. Today, we don't have that control. And that is what I'm hoping that is where we will get to.
I'm very happy. Sorry, Marshall.
No, I just wanted to continue on that thought. What about, will it become too much for the individual or even a business to control? How granular do we get with that? A permission for this, a permission for that. Will you track me here? Will you not track me there? One of the reasons I think that we have things as they are now is because people don't want to be bothered with that level of control. We've given it up.
At least if the user, the people are presented with that choice, then I agree with you. They are not even presented with the choice. I mean, that is the concern.
Das ist der Punkt. Genau das.
And the details. How many of us are presented, or how much marketing material were we shared about smart assistants helping you, right? Smart audio assistant. What are they not telling is as important or more important than what they are telling. Why are some of these so-called smart assistants grabbing information about your wireless networks and sharing with your neighbors? That's an important question without asking you. Why are some of them scanning all the devices that you use in your home network and are they passing that information? Do we know about it as consumers? Are we being asked about it? Or at least are we being told when we approve it? So none of this information and the permissions and all of this, none of this is being asked. I think that is a fundamental problem. And we have to put in systems in place, and some of it may have to come in a regulatory level, but I think that has to come in place. Otherwise, it's become a wild west when it comes to surveillance, and that absolutely has to change.
Yeah.
That is a very vivid picture I would like to tape up. So coming back to ancient history and the Greek mythology, we opened Pandoras Box. Yeah, we opened it and nobody is able to get den Deckel wieder drauf, to close it again.
Put the lid on, yeah.
Yeah, danke. The aspect is getting me such nervous, we are slaughtering ourselves for convenience, to put it in a very brutal way. Yeah. But in one of my former business lives, I worked for an Israeli security company, which is in cyber defense, one of the market leaders. And since then, I have a very vivid paranoia because I'm aware of what is collected. So we slaughtered ourselves, opened Pandora's Box and said, everything is so convenient. I get a suggestion about the favorite pizza I would like to eat. Surveillance and observation. Nobody is offering you healthy food. Surprise, surprise. We come to the point that if we do not treat that data properly, that we do have a lot of problems that we could be manipulated. 1984, George Orwell is just a book. And what came out of that book as
a prediction.
very dramatic view
Do I
is
need to bring the book out again?
It's now a joke. Yeah, you may show it again. It's now a joke because everything is true. And if you imagine what an agency, a surveilling agency or a secret service is getting on information for free, that really makes me mad. Yeah.
It's not for free. They are paying a hell of a lot for the software.
Yeah, but one of the funny things about it is it's not just a big organization doing it. It's all of us. It's not Big Brother. It's 8 billion little brothers and our phones.
And all this information is being connected, and there are both private entities, I'm sure, government agencies building operating system of surveillance, where they are knitting together, not just within a company or a country. In this case, you're talking about a global surveillance network. And that is scary. I think as an end user and the consumers, we should be in control of our data. And I think that comes down to that. And that comes with education, and people don't know what they don't know. Generally, from a business model side, if you make people lazy, that makes a good business model. If you do a product or a service that makes people lazy, or another word is convenience, as Ralph said, that's a business model. And majority of these companies do bet on that business model, where just grab everything that will make, people are lazy, and take that for granted and grab everything you can. We are in that wild west mode, and the pendulum has to swing from that.
Okay, so now if the pendulum swings, how can one make the pendulum swing? As well, it needs quite some momentum, not just, me, for example, I'm probably not strong enough to push it in the other way, or to significantly push it in the other way. What do you think it does take?
It takes time. It takes effort, and I see surveillance as the new smoking. And just like we have seen that swing, we will likely see that it will take education, the side effects of it. Some people will still continue. Again, that's their individual's preference. And once we keep educating, vendors will be questioned. And it comes from the customer side. If you look at it a business point of view, it comes from a customer side. It comes from an employee side. I've noticed a few things. We have taken a strong stance on privacy. One unintended consequence of that is people come and say, I'm proud of our stance on privacy, and I'm really glad I'm working for this company. We did not plan for it, but employees started to understand the implications of it, and they are actually glad that their personal value system aligns with the company's value system. So, which means just like employees like working for a company that is environmentally conscious, now employees like working for companies that are privacy conscious. So people or employees will vote with their feet. The same way I expect this to happen with customers too. Customers will want to work with companies or vendors that take their information and privacy seriously. And that transition will take several years. But for us to even get there, people have to be educated as consumers, employees, customers, all of us, people have to be educated about the implications of privacy.
Okay, so now,
building on the idea of Pandora's Box that Ralph started us with. In that myth, the one thing that stayed behind was hope, die Hoffnung. What is our hope that stayed behind? What is the end state that we can look forward to if we get this right? I mean,
I think
no pressure. It's a simple question.
people.
You are now becoming the Oracle of Delphi.
Not only the evangelist for Zoho, but Oracle from Zoho as well. That's a smart one. That's a cool one. I like that one.
You're doing good today.
End of the day, once we educate people, people will vote with their belief system and whatnot, right? Like, take news we have seen recently that Google is discontinuing Flock or postponing the Flock deployment by a couple of years. I looked at it as a sign of people valuing privacy. Why was it blocked? If you ask the question, why was it postponed? Because several vendors denied support, privacy-conscious vendors, be it Brave, be it Duck, be it several websites, and at Zoho we also decided not to support Flock, and all of these. Why did vendors do it? Vendors do it because that is a sign of a trust that people had on the system. So the question is not whether we need an alternative surveillance system. It is when people remove that support, they are basically voting for no surveillance system at all. Right? So to me, that is a hope. That is a hope that people are starting to take this seriously, and they are now voting, because a lot of these are user trust related. Like take a company like us or any B2B company for that matter. Our user trust is directly proportional and correlated with the revenue. If customers trust us, well, they will pick us and revenues will show up. In an advertising business model, it's a slightly different because your advertisers are not users. Your users are not your customers, and customers are someone else. In that case, revenue is inversely proportional, which means if you're really tracking someone, your revenues will likely go up because you're serving your customer, but the user trust will go down. When the user trust goes down, that means you will see a pushback like this against new ways of surveillance system. And that means there is going to be, once it becomes a movement, that is where the hope comes in. And I'm seeing these signs as a momentum that is building up. Whether we look at adoption of adoption of Brave, the browser, or DuckDuckGo, usage increasing. That means people are being conscious about their privacy, and they are voting with their usage. And over a period of time, it basically starts slow, but over a period of time, it accelerates, and it begins a snowball. And if there are vendors that know this snowball effect, it is the current ad companies that already know it. So it can, just like they have accelerated using this, it can also quickly decelerate as well if the trust is lost.
Now, what will be the effect? Just continuing that thought, no, one step back. So I now would argue that Flock wasn't postponed because of immense companies like DuckDuckGo or Brave saying, this is BS, but because of Amazon doing, no, I don't support it. So which is quite a different scale. So what, as a continuing thought based upon that, what is the impact on these, what Ray Wang would call digital networks? Data-driven digital networks is what he names them, which is basically what the business model of these companies is. What is their impact there? Besides some segmentation.
I think Raju is frozen.
I think so as well. We lost him, basically. I lost him.
What have you done, Thomas?
Oh my God. It's
but
so
he
hot
froze
over
with
here.
a smile. That
Yeah.
is nice.
Yeah, it's so hot over here. So
I mean, if you have to go, that's how you want to go, with a smile on your face.
With a
With a
smile on your
smile,
face, right?
Yeah.
But we want to have him back, such as there is a lot to ask and to make a statement pro Zoho in a way that what we observed over the last at least 12 months is how cautiously and how very well thought and thoughtful Zoho
he's coming
is.
back.
Yeah, Zoho is taking care of.
Welcome back, Raju.
Apologies.
No
Yeah,
problem.
looks like
This
my.
is live. This
I
is
al-
live. This
I
is
already
real
forged
live, and it's a live broadcast. And now everybody has a proof. This is not a show in the way of pre-recorded. No, sir. This is really live. I just wanted to make a positive statement on Zoho, such as the last 12 months, we have looked into a lot of stuff. We have seen a lot of data collecting environments, and we found out that usually if you get something for free, you are the product, your data, your behavior, whatever you do, and you are tracked. Not with Zoho. So I'm positively surprised that even that you give products away for free, not during pandemic, but as a clear course to the idea of sharing is caring, and that you are giving them the free choice to a certain degree. You get the standard, which is built in, and if you need some more, you buy. Yeah, it's a freemium model. Yeah.
The pure freemium model without any catches, and that's
Genau.
the way. That is the key.
Thank you for adding that.
we've always believed in it, and that is even when we started, 15, 20, even none of our products across all categories for the last 25 years have any advertising. We have never done advertising because there is a conflict of interest. End of the day, you're serving users, but then you're getting money from somewhere. There is a conflict of interest. We don't want to get there. It's a plain old business model. But then, as a company, the way we do it, just again, we want to treat customers the way we want to be treated. It's a very old model, and it works for us. I guess the advantage we have is, as a private company, we can value things that matter. And it's not purely numbers. And going back to what Thomas was mentioning about numbers, in fact, the measurement numbers play a critical role. Not everything that can be measured should be measured, and not everything that is measured is important. Right? Like take something like revenue. Well, revenue is a good measure. Is that the only measure a company should be measured by? I don't think it is. There are other important unmeasurable things that we stopped measuring or we stopped paying attention to just because they cannot be measured. That is a problem. That is a measurement problem. So, companies' strength are looking at their revenue number or a market cap number. Well, can we look at it based on the capital, not financial capital, but the capability, capital as a capability they have built? And it cannot be measurable. And obviously, there are mathematicians and financiers involved that are making some of these decisions, and they are number-centric. And because it cannot be measured, they think it's not important. But the unmeasurables are as important as, if not more important than the measurables. Thinking like the culture of a company. And there is going to be a ripple effect, and they could be measured down the lane. But again, numbers and measurements are lagging indicators. The leading indicator is something else. Numbers typically tend to be lagging indicators. Employee happiness cannot be directly measured, but it can be indirectly measured through something like an attrition. And you cannot measure the culture of a company. But I say there is a indirect correlation between attrition, employee attrition, and the culture. If your attrition is high, then the culture is not very strong. There is an indirect correlation. So the measurement plays an important role. The same thing in privacy. Just because you cannot measure, that people are, not treating it as important or whatnot, doesn't mean that privacy is not important. It is not measurable, but it is yet an important component of the trust. How can you measure a trust in a system, be it an employee trust or a customer trust? Well, you cannot measure it, but it's extremely important. But that is where, as a company, it puts us in a good position where, because we don't pay too much attention to numbers, because we don't have Wall Street on our back, we are able to make decisions based on what is important for employees and customers, and the gut feel and all of those things that are unmeasurable is given importance. And privacy, the importance to privacy is one such that.
While we're talking about figures, if anyone wants to do further reading on this out in the audience, there's a name you may have heard, William Edwards Deming, sort of a famous one in terms of management. He came up with the 7 deadly diseases of management, and one of them is running a business on visible figures alone. So it's not a new idea. It's in fact a very old idea that gets ignored a little bit too much. I'm glad that, Zoho has figured out that it's really not a good
Isn't
thing.
this the same Deming that did the Deming Circle?
Yes.
Which is utterly about numbers.
Yeah, well, he's a smart guy. You
Well,
can have numbers and not numbers. But it's up against was it Peter Drucker who said, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it?
Yeah.
All of these things are true, kind of, but there is more to business and to life than the bottom line. There has to be.
You are absolutely right. And the point is that one has to decide if he is willing to leave the comfort zone and taking back some of his convenience and getting back some of the, in sense of hope versus Pandora, in getting back some of his control. And this is important in the perspective, if I see, do you have an example, Raju, aside of your own company's example, that competitive advantage through taking privacy serious is a possible business model?
It is a possible business model, and there are other companies, as I mentioned, like Apple is doing it, and it is becoming a business model. So is DuckDuckGo, and it is a good business model. Or Brave. These are some of the companies I certainly respect, and respecting people's privacy used to be the default, particularly in the offline world. And there are a few things that we do online that we cannot even imagine doing offline. And some of these business models started coming online, and we messed it up. So today, in the online, there are 3 business models. You pay with money, you pay with data, and then you pay with someone else's data. These are 3 different models, right? Imagine when someone comes and knocks on your door and says, hey, here is a product I'll give you for free if you share your contact book. Would you hand that random person over your contact book where you have the contacts of all your friends and family? We don't. Yet we are doing it online, where to get an access to an app, you share your contact list, and there it goes, and who knows what happens to it. We have taken that for granted. So any offline business that still hasn't spoiled with some of their online models are good examples of people who still respect privacy, and they're doing just fine.
Yeah. To this day, I'm still afraid to import contact lists in apps, because I remember when import contact list was just a code word for send an invitation to everybody on your contact list. And
well, that is one part.
Yeah.
Now what's happening is they're collecting all the contacts of the backend, and they're doing the machine, and then they're selling that information elsewhere. And there are alternative business models that are being brought at the backend where we don't have any visibility into that.
The fear of missing out was one of the drivers with the fascinating Clubhouse, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And we had it in several approaches. Me positively from GDPR perspective in a very harsh way. Yeah. What the hell we do that shit. Yeah. But this was too negative. So I came a bit in the being the big bad wolf running for the pigs, and I ate my chalk. So I say it's an interesting option to give away own data, yeah, and share a lot with the rest of the world by free will. But it doesn't tell me that you are very clever, yeah. And I do have my doubts if I would like to make business seriously with people which are taking care about their address book, because their address book is not their own. They have other people's data. And this is exactly model number 3. I pay with other people's data. How charming. Now, coming to that, GDPR does not provide any guidelines or helping hands to sue this. Yeah. So we have to have a new kind of, let's say, a pact or a deal, a new deal for data privacy, something like that, like in the 30s when they had the American New Deal for employment on some other ideas. So I believe it's desperately needed that we get a new attitude out of our comfort zone for taking care of data privacy, data security, and securing intellectual property.
Mm-hmm. We need those protections, and part of it, educating the citizens is needed, because they are the ones in mass can demand it, can demand the legislative bodies, and it eventually become law, and that is the only way to do it. So it starts with educating people about what's going on, and within the companies and whatnot. I think there is when the privacy is not a feature. Privacy is not a product level feature. It is a company level philosophical belief. You cannot tag privacy as a feature item at one department and do it. It has to come from the top. It is a belief system, and because it is very much tied to a business model, that is where it's not just education among the citizens, it is also education among the business leaders and why they should take privacy seriously. And it is ethically, that is also the right thing to do. It is not, you can be financially responsible, but ethically responsible. Then, can you sleep well at night? That is the question I would ask myself. And business leaders have to ask themselves that question. And, are you serving the users better? And are you proud of it? And that's an important dialogue to have, and education system that has to be in place.
Okay, so now how to combine that with the short-term thinking that a publicly traded company needs to follow? Because if you're putting ethics before business, your shareholders probably will crucify you as a business leader.
And that explains the lifespan of the company shrinking, Thomas. I mean, in 1950s, if you look at the S&P 500 companies, their medium lifespan used to be somewhere between 40 and 60 years. The company lasts for 40 and 60 years. Now it is more like 17 or 18 years. Why is it? What changed? It is hyper financialization and too much importance to the numbers. And that long-term thinking has been sucked out of it. Everyone, the short-term profits are prioritized over long-term thinking, which means the companies are disappearing. On the other hand, there are some private companies that are doing perfectly well. Private companies that have been executing for 100 plus years and doing perfectly well because they don't have that external pressure. They can do it in the interest of the long-term of not just the employees, the customers, the community, and whatnot. And that is one of our beliefs. Where that is one of the reasons we remain private. And that thinking has to change. Otherwise, that hyper financialized thinking is what leads to this. Because you're in a treadmill that constantly increases speed. It's just a matter of when you're going to fall off that. And public markets are that.
Well, it could also be a matter of getting consumer or customer level support, I think. If it's a matter of keeping the shareholders happy, if a business does something that would be short-term disadvantageous in terms of money, but makes its customers happy to the extent that they make up the difference, there's nothing for the shareholders to be unhappy with.
No.
So, people have to vote with their dollars. And those dollars have to be driven by the heart.
Not only with their dollars, but what I would like to see is, Marshall, to take up that, as Raju was so kind to mention the employee experience and not moving and being happy, that we have to have a polite form of asking our customers about their happiness, about their wishes, about their expectations, and then proper listening, implement this into our offerings. Yeah, but not in a nasty way. Each buy, I get a call. Each buy, I get an email. Hey, to hell, yeah? You don't pay me for my time, idiots. So incentivize me. Give me something such as what's in for me as a goodie that I'm spending my time.
Well, you do get it.
Or if
advertisement.
Hey, langsam. Or and we had that aspect in if I get an incentive in a proper, fair way, and I have a benefit, that I then am happily to share some data by free will and not get it robbed. That is the key differentiator. And another thing is out of curiosity, because your organization is, after I had the first time touch, I looked into the Zoho Academy, I looked in what you do in education, and I was, from the bottom of my heart, flashed that your CEO is being a teacher in his rural environment and spending a lot of time there with kids and looking that they are properly fed and that they are properly educated, not only in ground school, but also in higher education schools. So you have the opportunity to teach people and make them aware of how important privacy is in this year's or in this life, in this universe. Do you have actually programs in your educational programs on that topic?
I mean, on the privacy, not yet, Ralph. I think, in fact, our education is extremely fundamental, especially through Zoho schools of learning and whatnot. We teach basic math, communication skills, and all the useful ones are out there. Privacy, as we get to the business side of it, privacy and all of those will come in. These are all part of the ethics, and privacy is an important value system of Zoho. Whenever we bring a new employee, we say this is unchangeable value, and you're not going to compromise it. and every employee that is onboarded has to go through privacy sessions, what it means to be a Zoho employee, and how you have to treat the data, customer data, and whatnot. And we have also set up a chief privacy officer who basically goes on and educating everyone out there that taking everything seriously, both on the employee side as well as the customer side. It is now inbuilt into the framework, into the system itself, that you cannot really separate it. I find it interesting that sometimes, because all of us are pulled into multiple directions, a random employee comes in and questions a product or a feature and says, are we really protecting customer information on this? That to me, it really puts a smile, because every employee now, it is ingrained in every employee and they take it seriously. And the fact that they're questioning every single thing is a positive thing. So it is ingrained at that level, and I really hope it stays that way. And I see that as a positive thing.
Yeah,
That's a cool one. And it's a very interesting aspect, as one of the fathers and mothers of the German GDPR had a very high value in software product built in security. So by taking this into your company culture, it is only natural that you have it also built into your products, which is, from your perspective, a very big competitive advantage if you would not be so shy and promote it via marketing, but simply like, it is our culture, it is our business model to be fair with you. Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that word culture, Ralph, because the long-term competitive advantage is not going to be the products. It is going to be the culture. Because I remember the products some of us worked on in 2000, some of them are not around.
Yeah.
They have been discontinued. Similarly, you can assume that some of the products we are working on today will be irrelevant 20 years from now. But what will continue to be relevant is your culture, your value system, belief system, the relations that build. Or in other words, these are all unmeasurables. That is the lasting thing, not the measurables part.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I'm being very honest, since I have, through Thomas, a closer look into your organization, and from the starting point in 2015, when I had my first contacts with Zoho and Natalie, with Söll Vertriebs GmbH here in Germany, and she came to the first CRM Expo show I was responsible for, I said, wow, that's something impressive. That's a quite young lady, and she is putting all her eggs in something which can develop nicely, but it can also go to whatever. Yeah, she can get bust, and then I saw her commitment. I saw that she has joined in an Indian team, and that she has made a lot of things possible, such as, okay, I watch closely to my market, I listen to my customers' needs, I bet some own products in my rank, which is not yet into the suite. So I have an add-on product suite as well, and I go to the market needs and I create a larger customer base. And it worked out. Yeah.
It worked out, and I think in the last, I believe, month or two, we officially have a Zoho German entity with now employees in Germany, and that is expanding fast.
So back to the privacy. When you dropped out, I was just starting to contradict you, saying it's not the big DuckDuckGos of this planet who made Google reconsider, but it's rather the Amazons and the other big digital data networks. So what do you think, and how far there will be a segregation going on that helps the vendors initiated then ultimately via this step of Apple?
Yeah, I think the core reasons obviously will not be known, but there is an indirect sign if they have been observing is of user trust being going down, and that is a meta point they should be observing.
Okay.
And at this point, the trust level, I believe, has gone down significantly for some of these ad companies who have been abusing some of the customers' data without taking their permission. And in some cases, there might be products that might come out with technological advances and right stuff, but the challenge is going to be winning users' trust. It's not the technological merit anymore. It is going to be the real trust that matters. And I don't know, or as Steve Jobs put it, it's basically if you do something good, it's a deposit. If you do something bad, it's a withdrawal. And I think they have withdrawn a lot now, and that user trust, which is the balance, is significantly going down. That there's going to be a point, no matter how much you try to push, the trust is gone. I'm assuming we are approaching that limit.
The Karma Bank is nearly robbed. We need to pay in again.
Yeah. On a totally different topic, organizational. So how much time do you have?
Sunny, there is something about 60 minutes. What surprise.
Being mindful of your time. So
no, I'm open, Thomas. So
don't tell that we are greedy.
Yeah.
We are data greedy, information greedy. That's our business.
Well, we've got him now.
I'm absolutely open, Thomas. Yeah.
Carte blanche. No, so if there's one thing that you would give as an advice to companies that thrive on using lots of trackers on their site or selling off lots of data in order to have a side business, a profitable side business of sorts, what thing would you advise them, or what advice would you give them to probably pay back a little of the debt that they took on their bank of trust?
Or for that matter, how do they stop?
Yeah,
that's a good point. It needs to be business advice, because if they just stop, they probably go broke.
Well, they think they'll go broke, but not necessarily. I think, Marshall, that's a good point you bring up. What should they do? One, I do not think it can be done at the department level. This is a business level, top level decision. Because privacy is not a product level feature. That's an important thing.
Yeah.
I remember in 2015, Sridhar, CEO, made a post on internal Zoho Connect, which is the network we use for our entire company. Said, I want all the trackers out of Zoho, period. That was 2015. It took us several years to really implement it and make sure that all of those are removed. It is not just removing trackers on the website. What are what is the ripple effect of it? How about the mobile apps? How about the web apps? Who are we using as a third party for a third party piece of data? Like we were using Google Analytics. The question is, how do we not provide this data to Google Analytics? Which means we have to replace it. Which means we have to create our own analytics system out there. So the ripple effect of that, and paying close attention to who else has that data, will uncover a lot of surprises. And then you start closing each of these holes so that there is no data leak or privacy leak out there. And that can only happen when it comes all the way from the top. So this is not a feature. This is it should be a company level decision. a company level mandate. Otherwise, it is very, very tough to be implemented. So once it is implemented, and more importantly, you have to believe in it. If you don't believe in it, it will never get implemented. People will nod their head and say, do their job, right? And then tell the marketers who need some of this data. In a lot of cases, it is the marketers that may need this data, that consider marketing is going to be an art and not necessarily completely number-based science. Unfortunately, in the current world, the marketing has become pure science or number-centric approach. There has to be art to it. When was the last time you have seen a beautiful marketing campaign on some of these networks out there, right? So marketing has to be changed, and then the number-centric or measurement-centric approaches have to be tweaked to this new model. But it works. Or another way to ask is, after we removed all the trackers and whatnot, did it impact our revenue or our business? Not really. We may not have had the same level of information that we had about our information. That's okay. We still serve our customers the way we do. Not having a few reports is not bad at all. The trade-off is really key. You may not have a few reports, but you can lift your head up and be proud of the privacy and privacy of your users that you're protecting. That is more important. Not having some reports and whatnot is not a big deal.
Okay, so what you are basically saying, two things is, first, it's possible, or three things. Second, it takes time. And third, there are, in all likelihood, quite some figures that you don't even need.
Yeah, you don't.
Oh. Which are surpassed by things like work ethics, culture, and I was tempted to say policy, but the implementation of culture into real life.
Yes, and marketing and all of this existed before this hyper targeting and hyper measurement, and it will exist after this too. So businesses survived and brands were built without surveillance, and they will be built without surveillance too. So it is possible.
What is legitimate data to collect? I'm thinking of subscription economies. I'm thinking of IoT, preventive maintenance, for example, proactive maintenance even.
There are systemic data that are still important. I mean, we collect data about our system's performance and all of that. And that part is important. But there are other things that are not as important, particularly people measurement and whatnot. And in some cases, not everything you measure is important. Like ROI, take an ROI metric. ROI is important, but it is just one other metric. There are other things that are invaluable that cannot be put into the ROI bucket. That is where, as philosophically, an organization can move away from that number-centric approach. But as a company, we do measure the revenue and all of those, but we don't put too much emphasis on that.
Where does too much start?
It's important to understand what the core things are. I think pick a few metrics that you cannot live without and that are extremely important, and keep measuring those alone and get rid of the others.
The end of the day, that will be different per company, for sure.
Different per company, and that is where some companies will be able to do it while others cannot because of too much external pressure. Maybe there is no buy-in from the management, and that is the reality.
Yeah, it will be a nice change. I think it will be a nice change. Is one of the things I think that drove the explosion in the size and capacity of data centers, way back when they started being built, was that as soon as businesses were able to collect data, they collected everything. Like every piece of information they thought might be useful about customers, markets, competitors, anything, whether they had a use for it or not. They would collect it and they'd store it and they'd back it up and they'd update it. And just it would grow and grow and grow, and you needed some place to keep it. And there is still, I think, there's still that reflex, that desire to collect and to codify and to understand. We have to start breaking ourselves of. And the sooner the better.
I think that has been a good closing statement from our side. Raju, probably one from your side. So your top wish for the next 5 years in terms of privacy?
Oh, my wish list?
No, the top one. Make it
your
three.
wish list.
Make it
Very
three,
short
okay.
list.
I'm generous today.
Now we go for the top one.
My wish list is, again, users taking control of that data, and users being aware of what's important and what's not, and them being control of it. If we can have vendors to, everyone recognize the importance of user privacy, and if we can push them into it, that is good. So my wish list would be users wanting to take control. Once that want is there, eventually it will get executed one way or the other. But we would like citizens to be aware of what's going on, and they should want to be in control of their data. And I think that would be my biggest item.
Okay, thanks for that one. It's almost neoliberal from market capitalism. The market will do it. This is basically what you're saying there.
If we can accelerate it by a few years by educating people, then we all benefit. The society benefits from it.
It's a good statement. I basically hope for the same.
I hope we get this properly set up in a quote and make it as a teaser for encouraging people to look afterwards if they have missed our live audience approach in YouTube, in our channel, which we are happy to have. And I'm very grateful that you spend so much time and enthusiasm on our starting topic and took the complete flow with us and rode the wave in all directions. Thank you very, very much. This was great, fabulous.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. I
hope it will not be. I hope it will not be the last time.
Yeah,
we've got to have you back. This was too.
We scared you out once in between, so. Okay, thanks to you. Really highly appreciated. Thanks to all the faithful viewers who are still in there. So seems we didn't scare everybody off.
No.
Viewing faithfully.
And well, see you next time. Going offline now, so just ending the broadcast.